Our gospel reading for today is from the section of John's gospel that's known as Jesus' farewell discourse, the words that Jesus spoke to his followers before he ascended to heaven. In terms of the liturgical year, since we're still in Lent, this is very much out of order. But in terms of where we are right now, these words have much to say to us. Let's listen for God's word to us in John 15, verses 25 through 33. Jesus said to them, "I've been using figures of speech with you. The time is coming when I will no longer speak to you in such analogies. Instead, I will tell you plainly about the Father. In that day you will ask in my name. I'm not saying that I will ask the Father on your behalf. The Father himself loves you, because you have loved me and believed that I came from God. I left the Father and came into the world. I tell you again, I am leaving the world and returning to the Father." His disciples said, "See, now you speak plainly. You weren't using figures of speech. Now we know that you know everything, and you don't need anyone to ask you. Because of this, we believe that you have come from God." Jesus replied, "Now you believe? Look, a time is coming and is here when each of you will be scattered to your own homes, and you will leave me alone. I'm not really alone, for the Father is with me. I've said these things to you so that you will have peace in me. In the world you have distress. But be encouraged. I have conquered the world." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I want to talk a little bit this morning about the big gap between what we thought we'd be doing this Sunday and what we're actually doing. Probably each one of you has noticed that big gap each day between what you thought you would be doing, say last Tuesday, and what you were actually going to do. Our church plan for this Sunday was to finish up our series on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We were going to have a potluck. And at the potluck, we were going to really put into practice what it means to love our neighbors. We were going to give $50 cash to anyone who wanted to participate. Those who took the $50 had to promise that they would do two things. One, use the money to love a neighbor. And two, report back to us what they did. I was so excited about this. I was so looking forward to seeing different beloved church friends stand up in worship and tell us how they loved their neighbor. I'd made some suggestions like paying for the food of the person behind you in a drive-thru or buying groceries for someone. I was excited about that. And now we have to wait for another time. But we don't have to wait for another time to love our neighbors. We're still called to be a community that practices love. A big part of practicing love right now is not gathering for worship. Like the disciples in the reading from the gospel, we are all scattered to our own homes, but we are still a community, still a church, and we can love our neighbor. There is still the opportunity to show love in the time of COVID-19. Some years ago, the great author Gabriel Garcia Marquez wrote a book called Love in the Time of Cholera. In it, we see the lives of two star-crossed lovers, Fermina and Florentino. They fall in love as young people, but are separated by Fermina's father. Eventually, Fermina marries someone else, and for 51 years, 9 months, and 4 days, Florentino loves her. They are reunited after the death of Fermina's husband, and they go away on the river for a cruise. They persuade the captain to raise the yellow flag indicating cholera, so no one will ever come on board again. They are isolated forever on the river with their love. It is a compelling image, this idea that our love is exclusive, that we're meant only for one great love as a spouse or partner, and that we reserve our real love only for our nearest family. It's a compelling idea to think that we can take that love and isolate it. But we were not made for isolation. We were not created to only love a small select number of people. We were not made for distancing, social or physical. When the scriptures and Jesus tell us to love others, they mean it as an action, not just a thought. The reading from 1 Corinthians reminds us of how we can do that. This reading is not a romantic, breezy passage of poetry. This teaching on love is concrete. It tells us what loving someone looks like. In the Greek, Paul says something more like love shows patience. Love acts with kindness. Love is something we do. To be patient, kind, unselfish, never arrogant, never rude, to put up with all kinds of things. That's a tall order even in the best of circumstances. To practice love when we are cooped up with others or when we are alone and feeling completely isolated. How do we even do that? Even in this time, right now, we can practice love. Here are a few ways to practice love in the time of COVID-19. Go for a walk and see what small tasks you can do for your neighbors. For example, in the last years of my mom's life, she had a neighbor who would pick up mom's newspaper at the end of her driveway and place it just outside the garage door to make it easier for mom to get. When it rained and she wasn't able to take her walk, this neighbor would drive over and move the paper up to the garage door. When someone tells you that they have an upcoming job interview or a test or a doctor appointment, mark it on your calendar. Follow up on the big day with a note of encouragement to let them know you're praying for them. Afterward, call or text. Find out how it went. Connect with neighbors and friends on Facebook or other social media. Contact them from time to time just to see how they're doing. Look for ways that you can ease this difficult time for others, writing cards and notes, with phone calls and texts, waving outside windows, picking up prescriptions or groceries to leave on the porch. We don't have to do it on our own. Christ is at work in the world to make our lives and communities look more and more like this busy, active, tireless love that 1 Corinthians describes. And Christ has conquered the world. At this time, when love means staying apart on behalf of one another, know that God knows you and loves you exactly as you are. Know that even though we are scattered to our own homes, we are one people, one community, one church with many gifts. And of all of the gifts we have been given to share with each other and with the world, the greatest of these is love. Amen.